Top FBI and Department of Justice officials giving lawmakers classified briefings on the origins of Spygate. Presumably, the Obama administration operation that used one or more spies to surveil President Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Today's briefing, initially meant for Republican leaders of the House Intelligence and Oversight Committees, Devin Nunes and Trey Gowdy. The Department of Justice, however, agreed then to brief the bipartisan so-called Gang of Eight in a separate meeting after Democratic lawmakers who claim there is no Spygate whined and complained about not being briefed about it at all. Joining us tonight, Chris Farrell, Director of Research Investigation for Judicial Watch. Chris, it's unclear what they saw, what they were briefed on, what they actually witnessed with their own eyes.
I think this is a Justice Department expectations management meeting. They wanted to be able to say, hey, look, we were forthcoming and we held meetings and we briefed you. But I have a very high percentage belief that it was all very controlled and contrived, that it was carefully managed, that the Justice Department and FBI were less than forthcoming. And it sort of allowed all the parties to say, oh, yes, we met and we talked about it. But I doubt very seriously whether Mr. Nunes and Mr. Gowdy are entirely satisfied with the answers they got.
How soon will we find out?
As soon as they hold a press conference. I mean, I would encourage them not to be shy. I don't want them, obviously, to violate any security restrictions, but they can certainly get in front of a camera and opine about how the meeting went, what was conducted, how frank they were, how many documents they saw. There's all sorts of details without discussing the actual substance that those gentlemen can convey to the public, and I think they have a duty to do so.
The president making it very clear he wants total transparency, absolute transparency on the Department of Justice and the FBI conduct, behavior, and its leadership particularly. I mean, the Department of Justice and the FBI have been stripped of some of their senior leadership, in some cases, in the FBI, all of it over the top 5 positions.
Yes.
And people are not even, I mean, there's a debate with the Dems in Congress about whether or not they were culpable, whether they were guilty of breaching our Constitution and law. My God, what is the debate about? It's clear and straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, the Democrats at this point are chained to a story. And the problem is the story keeps shifting and rolling around and evolving because they can't get the story straight.
Because
they can't get of course, because they can't get the story straight. So you have to keep playing double talk word games to try to get around it. The president, and I would encourage the president to do this, with a stroke of a pen, he can order the release of these documents. He doesn't have to talk about it or around it or kind of hope out loud that someone does something. He can have it happen with the stroke of a pen. It's discretionary on his part.
And as we look at what is happening, John Brennan writing all sorts of nonsense, whether it's on Twitter.
He's lost his mind. Yeah,
I couldn't argue the point, certainly.
He's disgraced himself. I'm waiting for him to post a selfie, of himself wrapped in the American flag. He's gone off the deep end. And the reason why is because he's terrified. He's been caught. And more to be revealed. And
Robert Mueller, what state is his mind in? What state is his investigation? It's been 2 years with the FBI investigation that preceded it by almost a year, and now the more than a year since Robert Mueller was made special counsel and has carried out an investigation that's produced exactly nothing.
Yeah, now agents are purportedly, they've been dispatched to Israel to run down leads. I thought this was about Russian collusion.
Yeah.
This is a slow motion deflation. He's going to have to get a couple of scalps to say he did what he did. But of course, half the indictments are Russians who'll never set foot in the United States. So I think I'd like to believe it's winding down because there is no there. But it's such a political football.
That also would presume a lot of integrity on the part of the special counsel, which obviously
and his staff, which is utterly compromised.
Right. It's stunning stuff to witness this. T.S. Ellis, the district court judge, who is going to rule, apparently, on whether or not the special counsel exceeded its mandate and its scope envisioned at least under the August 2nd memorandum. We're still waiting, and he seemed to be the most animated and intelligent, frankly, judge to take up the issue. What do you expect, if anything at all?
Well, I mean, I believe what he says, and he's on the record from the bench expressing great skepticism about what the letter of the scope memo says versus the conduct of the special counsel. You know, the 4 a.m. no-knock warrant against Manafort's house is a combination publicity stunt and threat. It has no realm, it has no normal sort of existence in the ordinary scope of an investigation like this. And I think that Judge Ellis sees through it, and he knows that the cast of characters under Mueller will do virtually anything to get what they want.